In this video, we're going to be talking about the inputs of your laptop computer. So we're going to be going over both the desktop and also laptop for the inputs. And what these inputs are is essentially these things that you can, depending on the cords that you have, essentially put it into the laptop in these slots. And from there, it should essentially work for whatever you need it to do. So I know that's very broad, but let me go specifically into each one of these different slots to explain what they do. That way you know how to use them. And the good news is too, if you ever forget, sometimes they even have icons next to the input. That way you know for sure. And you can actually see that. Maybe it might be a little bit hard to see it in this photo here, but there is actually a headphone icon there, and there's also a microphone icon here. And they even have this labeling here on each one of these as well. A lot of laptops do. Not all, but a lot do. But regardless here, let me kind of tell you what each one overall does, how often you're going to use it, and also essentially, you know, what is it exactly. So the first one here that's not even labeled, I believe that is actually the slot for where you would charge your laptop. So over time, your laptop's battery will die. That's what, you know, that's really what it's called. So it just, over time, the charge goes down, and it actually can give you it in a percentage, meaning, you know, when it's all the way charged, it'll be 100%, but then when it gets down lower, you know, it goes all the way from 100 to eventually 0. And from there, you want to make sure that you're charging your laptop either when you're not using it, or you can actually charge it while you're using it as well. Probably the healthiest thing for your laptop would be to ideally turn off your laptop, then charge it for whatever is recommended by the manufacturer, typically somewhere in the range of 3 to 5 hours on average. And from there, after that, unplug it, turn the laptop back on, and then do that repeatedly each time. Now, that is probably the healthiest / best way to do that for the laptop, but realistically, a lot of people don't do that. It ends up just getting charged whenever it needs to be charged, and also often is charged while even using the laptop. And I'll say too, for myself, right now I'm actually using a laptop to film this, and right now my battery is currently charging, so I have the charger cord inside the slot of my laptop to make sure that, you know, the laptop won't die on me or anything of that sort. So next, and by the way, you will be using this a lot, so this is a very common slot. Next is like a landline. You don't really see these much at all anymore. This is an older laptop. I can kind of tell by the thickness. Typically, laptops can be even thinner than this nowadays. And this is a side view, by the way, of the laptop. So this is the top of the laptop. This is the bottom of the laptop. And this is probably the left side of the laptop here. And that's where we're looking at these slots, by the way. So yeah, with this, I don't think many laptops anymore use this. This is more in like the older laptops. Same thing with the VGA here. This is like kind of what you would basically plug in order to see the screen of the computer go to whatever screen, or could even be a projector, as far as like plugging this VGA cord into the other input on another device. And so you probably, since they don't really make these anymore, you're definitely not going to be using these much anymore, but instead, as an alternative, what's very common now is called an HDMI cord. So this does the same exact thing, just in a modern way as a VGA would for the most part, to simplify it down. So this way you'd have an HDMI cord, you plug it into your laptop, and then you plug in the other end of the cord to another electronic device, such as a TV or projector or something of that sort. So that way, essentially, you could see the screen of your laptop on the likely larger screen or the other screen. How often you'll be using this really depends on if you still have, say for an example, a job where you're required to do a lot of presentations, then you could potentially be using this one a lot. Or if you like to stream, you know, movies or something through your laptop, but then for some reason you need to, you know, put it on like maybe a projector or something of that sort. If you do that a lot, then you'll probably use this a medium amount of time, but I'd say most people don't use this a whole lot, honestly. The next one is a very, very common one that you'll pretty much always use all the time, which is what's called then a USB. input. So this is a USB. You can kind of think of it as like this, like a rectangle, like a somewhat thicker rectangle in comparison to this one right here. But these are going to be probably the most common inputs, minus, charging up the laptop. And these essentially are for any other electronic device that you're using with the laptop to be plugged in order for it to essentially have power and work. For an example, the microphone that I'm using right now actually is a microphone that uses a USB cord to use it as power. However, on the flip side too, there are actually other microphones that can even plug into your laptop, which actually here's input right here for a microphone. Again, there is an icon right there for a microphone, and essentially if you have this type of input, you could plug it in here, and essentially from there you could actually use whatever microphone you got. It's being basically that audio is going to be then be able to be translated into your computer in a sense of it can hear what you're saying and basically be putting it into whatever program you're using. So let me go back to here. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So USB is very common. You'll be using it likely a good amount of times. And on top of that too, when it comes to any of these inputs, remember that if you're not sure, just look at the end of the cord that you're using and match it up with the shape of whatever you're trying to put it into as far as what slot. And if it's the wrong shape or they don't match in shape, then don't ever try to basically put the wrong shape in the wrong input, because that could damage your laptop and also cord. And it's only designed for things that are the same exact size, pretty much, just the cords being typically either a little bit smaller, or in some cases typically something in the lines of whatever makes it fit into the inputs. But regardless here, the next one here is a memory card reader. So not all laptops have this, but this is really nice. This is where you put like memory cards for, like, say a camera, for an example. They also actually have even smaller versions of this for they call it a micro SD card, which is where it's like maybe the size of your fingernail, something of that sort. That's how big those SD cards are, or the memory cards are now. So if you have a more updated laptop, then you might even have that input instead of the larger ones that you would see maybe more commonly, maybe like 5 to 10 years ago. So just keep that in mind. These are always overall changing just with technology, but for the most part, a lot of laptops will have some type of option there for you. And then we already discussed both of these two. You have the options of course, putting in an input for a microphone, or if you have headphones, you can actually do the same thing. It has the same input, but just, of course, make sure you're putting in the right slot of the computer, otherwise it won't work. So with all of that said, hopefully that makes sense. I hope this doesn't confuse you at all. Again, over time, you'll realize that this is actually a piece of cake and it's easy. I realize in the beginning it might seem a little overwhelming or confusing. All I have to say is don't worry. I have confidence that you'll be able to understand this over time. But really, for the most part, what you need to know in the beginning is just know that your laptop, if you have a laptop, needs to be charged. So put that the charging cord into the charging input of the laptop there. And then also too, if you ever want to use headphones, a microphone, or upload your maybe videos and photos into your laptop, this is where you can do it. Along with maybe using some type of other electronic as well, you can use the USB inputs. Regardless, here, I'm going to end the video here. Thank you so much for listening. And if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm always here to help. Thanks so much, and I look forward to talking to you in the next lesson.